And we're live. Commissioner Rocky Smith, Commissioner Doug Neely, Commissioner Denise McGriff, Commissioner Frank O'Donnell, Commissioner Adam Morrow, Vice Chair Sean Cross, and Chair Mike Mitchell.
I have 4 comment cards, but it looks like the only one that doesn't say that it's on an agenda item would be Mr. Edgar. Mr. Edgar, is your comment on an agenda item or not?
No.
Okay, then come up, please.
Thank you. My name is Paul Edgar. I'm a member of the but I'm also a member of the Community Action Board of the Veterans Advisory Council. That's one of the reasons why we take a veteran to the Veterans Village at times very tough. Anyway, we're having about an 89% success rate with people who go to the village, and go back on the street. All problems. They move ahead, and it's been very, very successful. Shelters. Funding and abilities to do things like this. And Oregon City should be looking at where we might be able to put together a homeless shelter village in and around Oregon City. But let me assure you, I know that there is you need to have a place that's correct, that fits. But we don't want to have people wandering around. We're talking about, Dan Fowler's got a plan to put together a intervention center, I guess you might call it, down at the old Miles Plastic facility. But here we bring people in, we put a Band-Aid on them, and they walk out the door, and almost immediately the Band-Aid falls off. And we virtually make no headway. And I really don't think that's positive. I think we can do better. And therefore, I believe that it's important that we put together our shelter village clustering with services where we could do it. I brought up, and not everybody agrees with me, but I thought maybe a good place would be next to the Cove and the bridge, the 99 bridge between Oregon City and West and Gladstone. But we could put something in even if it's in a floodplain area, where we can put small houses. Some of you know that I built a shelter house, an 8x12, just to find out what it would take to have something that was really good with lockable doors and abilities, insulated, wired, walled. And you're talking $2,500, and I'm an 83-year-old guy building a building like this. It could be done. It's not like something that everybody can do or can't do. But we should be looking at how urban renewal could take properties or places and fund something that actually makes a better world. That's what we're looking for. We're trying to save lives. We're trying to turn lives around. And I'm hoping that you guys could say, hey, this is something we might be able to look at, and it would be positive, and I would love to see something happen and some creativity, because we've got a lot of smart people right there. And I hope you can come together with us to try to come up with a good solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it looks like the other comment cards are related to agenda items. Yeah, I understand, but they're items that are on the agenda. Okay, would you like to come up then now and speak on the one that is not on the agenda?
If you could use the one over on the left, sorry, that microphone's having issues. Could you use the one over on the left, please? Thanks.
Good evening, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners. James Nasita, Oregon City. There's an item not on the agenda tonight that I would respectfully request that you consider adding to the agenda tonight. As background for my request, I have in my hand a copy of Defendant's Corrected First Amended Answer and Affirmative Defenses in Williams versus Conkle and URC, case number 22 CV 26004. And in your seventh affirmative defense, for the first time, you argue that the entirety of Section 59 of our charter is preempted by state law, including our right to vote provision in sections A through D of Section 59. When this case was first filed, your affirmative defense, seventh affirmative defense, only referenced Section 59E, because that's the only section that Mr. and Mrs. Williams raised. So 6 days after we voted down Measure 3597, this was filed on May 25th, 2:49 p.m., in which you now challenge all of Section 59, including our right to vote provision. I would like an agenda item where I would respectfully request an agenda item be added to tonight's meeting to review this and vote to reverse the course you took in this and return your defense to only Section 59E, Section 59A through D. Our right to vote provision is wholly irrelevant to your defenses in this lawsuit. The reason this is in here is to kill off our right to vote that we changed our charter by petition in 2012 through Measure 35907. And I would further request that if you want to take this course, you should do so in a noticed public meeting where all citizens can have a say in the course you're taking. If you want to destroy our right to vote that we adopted in 2012 through Measure 3407, you could do that by having the City Commission refer a vote to measure to the voters to repeal that. Or the people that oppose our right to vote could do an initiative to repeal it. But trying to do this on the sly by raising it in a defense in a lawsuit, I don't believe is the appropriate way to try to extinguish that right to vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, Mr. Gifford, your comments are on agenda items? Okay, well, we'll deal with those when we come to those items.
Could you not speak from back there? I don't know we don't know what's going on. So is there some note on his sheet? I want everybody to be able to talk.
It says 1,2, and I'm just trying to get clarification on what item he wanted to speak on.
Oh, I'm sorry. Item 1 is citizen comments. Item 2 is the discussion.
Okay.
Thank you. Just try not to put them on the same form. It's really confusing.
Mr. Gifford, go ahead, please.
Thank you. My name is William Gifford, and I live in Oregon City. You should know that I'm not an attorney. I'm just a friend, a neighbor, a citizen who's asking for your help in addressing the long-term future of our mutually loved city. I am a bit of a geek, though, and so, thanks to Zoom's capability to transcribe spoken comments, I don't need to paraphrase a request made at the last URSC meeting by an attorney. I can quote it verbatim. I believe it set a precedent. My request is not for this non-agenda item, number 1, public comments, but rather for the comments that I propose to make regarding agenda item number 2, the discussion. Here's my request. I will be speaking for my wife, Joyce Gifford, who is tied up with preparedness for her father's military funeral tomorrow, as well as for myself. Quote, since I'm representing 2 different people, and I'm not sure how long I will take, I'd ask for 6 minutes instead of 3. I'm not sure I'll need the full time. End quote. Furthermore, I will promise not to threaten to sue the city or its agencies. It's a well-established tactic in law enforcement not to negotiate with terrorists. A comment from later in that transcript, quote, I will just say this, I refuse to be threatened by the possibility of litigation. So my ask at this point is to simply allow me 6 minutes to explore my upcoming request.
We have a pretty important discussion that we're trying to get to tonight on our 3rd agenda item, so I think we'll go with 3 minutes per person.
And yet, last meeting it went to 6.
I don't have
Mine
a
is
problem
about
if he wants
4.5
to
minutes.
represent Joyce.
Okay, how does the commission
I
feel?
don't have a problem with it.
No problem, okay, fine.
I have an issue with
6 minutes,
that.
thank you.
Oh, what's going on?
Okay, I don't either. Okay. At this point, we're on to agenda item number 1, which is resolution number UR 23-01, adopting urban renewal budget, making appropriations and declaring a tax increment for the 2023-2025 biennium.
It's actually item number 2.
It says number 1 on my agenda.
I don't know, I'm looking at it right now.
I got 2. I got a different, I printed it out, it's different apparently.
I'm looking on the screen.
That explains some of the confusion with Mr.
Oh,
Gifford's
number 1 and
numbers.
number 2,
Yeah,
yes.
anyway,
Totally.
Mr. Zook.
Good evening, Commission, Urban Renewal Commission. My name is Matt Zook, I'm the Finance Director, and this evening we have in front of you Urban Renewal, Resolution 2301, adopting the Urban Renewal budget, making appropriations, and declaring tax increment for the 2023-25 biennium. In my staff report, I'll briefly run through that. In the staff report, there's a historical account of action taken by the Urban Renewal Budget Committee on May 25th, and what the outcome of that budget process was, the approved budget that came from their deliberation. On June 7th, we met in front of you and was directed through the discussion to come back with an updated resolution and a revised budget that reflects the motion to declare $0 of tax increment assessed value for 2023-24 and 25% of the maximum amount for 24-25. The public hearing was closed and the URC tabled the adoption of that budget until tonight. And so tonight we're bringing back to you a revised resolution 2301 and a budget that's included in the packet totaling $10,490,800. In that budget, there are columns that reflect the changes that transpired between the approved budget coming out of the Budget Committee and then the revised budget that reflects what the Commission directed staff to do on June 7th. So that is in your packet, and the changes were primarily reduction of the tax revenue and reduction of the capital outlay that would go towards capital projects off of the urban renewal
plan list. So those changes are reflected in the budget, and one part of the staff report reflects that actually it was a good thing that the motion was tabled, because ORS 457.4453 actually states that if the Renewal Commission does reduce the tax as was directed, notification, consultation, and confirmation must be done with the taxing districts. And we did that. I sent a phone call to each district, sent an email to each district, was able to connect in person with 9 of the 12. 3 I did not hear back from, but the letter, each one of those districts, there was no objection. Obviously, the explanation to them was that with a reduction of the tax levy, they would stand to not have taxes directed away from their district to the Urban Renewal Agency, but rather they would receive what they implement. Obviously, the impact on each district can vary. In their letter, I put 2022-2023 implications of the taxes that we knew. As you know, we collect about $3 million a year in tax increment revenue from the tax division of taxes. So, anyways, all of those conversations were, pleasant and favorable, and so tonight, after having heard my staff report, we're requesting that you run through the options of, you have the option to approve this resolution, deny it, or to provide edits. And I will make a note that we're running out of time to take action on this. Of course, June 30 is the drop dead date. So that is my staff report.
Are there any questions for Mr. Zook? Okay. So there is some confusion with the agenda item numbers. So, Mr. Nocita, do you have a comment on this item? No. Okay. All right. Any discussion from commissioners or motion?
I'd like to, excuse me. I'd like to move that we approve resolution UR 23-01.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. Call the vote, please.
So the Urban Renewal Commission is required to hold one public meeting. You've held that meeting. You closed the record at the last meeting. It's totally at your discretion whether you open that up for public comment again or not.
What's the pleasure of the commission?
Well, we need to hear the citizens' comment.
Yeah, I have no problem.
Okay.
If you
Do you
Mr.
need to
Gifford.
withdraw that motion, or is it fine, dead?
Do we need to open a public hearing?
The discussion is what to do with the motion that's currently pending. And, I think we can have discussion while it's pending. I don't see that having comment.
Can we delay the motion
We can.
and then invite Mr. Gifford to speak on behalf of the judge?
I don't see why, the motion is still
I move
pending.
to delay the motion.
Okay. Mayor, can you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're setting the motion aside. We'll hear from Mr. Gifford.
Yep, that's you. It was kind of a delayed, like it was on time lapse delay tonight or something.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is still William Gifford. I still live in the city. Thank you for your time. You may know that I have served our city for many years in many capacities. Two of those current capacities are including the Renewal Commission Budget Committee and the Clackamas Fire District Budget Committee. Due to scheduling pending election results, both committees were scheduled to meet the same night at the same time. Because the CFD budget is much larger than the URC budget, and because there are fewer appointed citizen members, I chose to attend the CFD meeting, expecting to wrap that up and get back to OC for the end of the URC meeting. Unfortunately, thanks to traffic on I-5, I arrived back in OC just as the URC meeting had concluded. The point is that there were only 13 budget members there. Again, according to the transcript, quote, 8 of which did not even know what TIF was. And that was very discouraging to me, end quote. Of course, I watched the recording of that meeting in great detail. From my understanding, there was only one appointed member who questioned the technical acronym TIF. That person seems to me very bright and keenly knowledgeable of money and property transactions. Unfamiliarity of one acronym does not indicate ignorance of a concept. The non-elected members of that budget committee were appointed by you, the URC. If there was any doubt of their ability to make intelligent and informed decisions, they should have not been appointed. In fact, they represent that segment of your citizens who care enough to be informed and actually show up. Through the democratic process, that committee chose a path of action to continue to tax the properties in Urban Renewal District, not the entire city, the maximum amount. That democratic process, which lasted over an hour and a half and included appointed citizens, was thrown out on its ear at the last Urban Renewal Commission meeting by one argument, which lasted 3 minutes and 50 seconds. That argument could easily be eviscerated with a careful reading and the most elementary knowledge of disinformation techniques and logical fallacies or cognitive biases. It's not my point to do that here. In fact, there was one term which was the basis of the entire premise with which I agree: lazy money. However, although I thoroughly agree with the premise, the conclusion does not stand up to scrutiny. Simply put, the correct conclusion would be the solution to lazy money is not to stop collecting it, but rather to invest it in projects that will increase in value. If I have a personal passive income source, such as Social Security, royalties from an invention or song I've written, or even profit from rental properties, and I did nothing with that money other than stashing it in a low-interest bank account, I may as well be putting it in a sock under my bed. As the premise clearly noted, although figures were not fact-checked, due to inflation, the purchasing power of that money diminishes severely every year. Should I then tell the government to stop my Social Security checks? Refuse my royalties? Allow all my tenants to use my properties rent-free? Hardly. That would be as senseless as stopping the income flow of urban renewal taxes. I reiterate, the solution to lazy money is not to stop collecting it, but rather to invest it in projects that will increase in value. And contrary to some opinions, it would not, quote, send a message to anyone other than the public that we just don't know what we're doing with all this money. At that same meeting was used the phrase, in the spirit of compromise. In my book, compromise means give and take, not I'll give and you take. Giving your lunch money to the school bully is not a compromise when the only thing they are offering you is to not punch you in the face. Big takeaways. Number one, don't negotiate with terrorists. Number two, don't give your lunch money to the school bully. My ask of you tonight is to choose option 2 of the staff report. Deny resolution number UR 2301. Reaffirm the considered opinion of your budget committee on May 25th of this year to continue taxing the Urban Renewal District at its full legal rate for both years of the biennium, and get serious about investing that money for greater long-term returns for our city.
Thank you. Okay, at this point, can you restate the motion, please?
Yes. I move to approve resolution UR 23-01, resolution.
Again, second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Go ahead with the vote, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
No.
Commissioner Doug Neely,
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow,
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross,
No.
and Chair Mike Mitchell.
No.
Motion passes.
Yes.
I just want to thank Gifford for your comments. It was appreciated. You did go over time, but that's all right. But thank you.
Okay. We are on to, depending which paper you look at, item number 2 or item number 3, which is request to release the January 18th, 2023 Urban Renewal Commission Executive Session Minutes. Mr. Conkle.
So as you may recall, thank you, evening Urban Renewal Commission members. On the June 7, 2023 Urban Renewal Commission meeting, a request was made by a member of the public to release the January 18, 2023 Urban Renewal Commission Executive Session Minutes. So this is an opportunity for the Urban Renewal Commission to discuss the request and provide direction on how to proceed. We have the attorney here to help if you have any questions or through this process.
Any questions for Mr. Conkle or Mr. Kabisman?
I don't have any questions.
Any
but
discussion?
I'd like to make a comment if.
You just, go ahead.
I guess I would like it to be known in the record for purposes that the person that is requesting this information has served as an urban renewal commissioner and also as a city commissioner, and I would assume still remembers what the rules are with regard to commission meetings and executive sessions, which is why I find it rather curious that this person has seemed to have forgotten that information. And where they got this information from, that something else was happening, is beyond my level of comprehension. That's how rumors get started, and Oregon City is not unlike many cities where the rumor mill moves along and until disproven. I guess I'm just a little bit confounded by the request, so that's all I wanted to say.
First of all,
Anybody else have any discussion? So,
yeah, okay, let me just make a comment first then. The executive sessions are a form of attorney-client privileges, and I don't think anybody would take lightly to release them. And so I'm going to make a motion that we deny the request for the release of the January 18, 2023 Urban Renewal Commission Executive Session Minutes.
I think we have people that want to comment on that.
Okay,
So
sorry.
if you want to hang on to that.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yes. Do you have comments?
Do people want to talk about this?
No.
There's nobody listed? Okay, I
No.
thought since we got the numbers mixed up, I thought there was a number, somebody had asked for number 3.
No.
In that case, I'll second Mr. Neely's motion.
Okay, go ahead with the vote, please.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Doug Neely.
Aye.
Commissioner Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Morrow.
Aye.
Vice Chair Sean Cross.
Yes.
And Chair Mike Mitchell.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. All right, we are on to the next item, the last item on the agenda, which is discussion of the Urban Renewal District and implementation of the Urban Renewal Plan.
Thank you. So in my staff report, I put this on here to provide an opportunity. Obviously, we brought forward, and the Urban Renewal Commission adopted the 11th Amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan. That was placed on the ballot for a vote requesting approval to sell up to $44 million in bonds. That vote did fail at the May 16th, 2023 election. So staff is really requesting, how would the Urban Renewal Commission like to move forward? In our discussions internally, it felt like, is that something the Urban Renewal Commission wants to do, is set aside time to have a discussion about what do we do now? And how do we do that? What are the priorities? What can we do? What can't we do at this point? And if there's a feeling that, yes, that's a timely discussion that we want to have, I think the next component is, what can we as staff provide you? Is there information that would be helpful in that discussion? Are there lingering questions or information that we may have had in the past that, we could bring forward again for discussion? And then the third component of that would be, it just feels like, we've traditionally done these from 6 to 7, and it feels very rushed and difficult to have a really good conversation in 1 hour. Would the Urban Renewal Commission like to maybe start earlier so we could dedicate maybe an hour and a half, or find another date when we can focus on this issue? So really just trying to help how can we help facilitate a discussion on what do we do now, if that's the interest of the commission.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Neely?
I guess I'd like to, excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, would you please turn it off? It's really glaring for me. Sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, just make the request.
Yes.
It's off it. Anyway, what I would suggest, under Agenda 1, there was an indication that Jerry Herman wanted to talk, and he's recently had an eye surgery, and I think he's recovering. He did submit, however, a letter that was in our packet, not our pocket. Anyway, I think our emphasis should be on properties that the Urban Renewal Commission owns. And I think some of these, he suggested a visioning process, and I think on some of these areas that we own, we probably should go some kind of public input. And I'm thinking specifically of the Cove area, but there may be others as well, and that's a thought I'd like to put forward and make our concentration over this next biennium on lands that we in fact own, and how do we want to proceed on them. Commissioner McGriff?
Yes, we already made that decision that we were going to concentrate on the city, on our own properties. And I think one of the things I want to channel Mr. O'Donnell, if you'll let me do that again tonight.
Please.
We owned a property that's got some houses, and we had talked about just generally about disposing of those. And I would like to suggest that we start with those and ask staff to prepare some documents so we can put those on the market and get them on. We don't really be needing to own residential land. And that would at least where I would like to see us start. That's low-hanging fruit. The second one is that we talked fairly extensively about the Stimson property, and I don't have any problem with your idea, but I would like us to at least start with that one maybe and figure out what we'd like to see there, given the zoning, which we did receive the maps, but they can be put up on the screen again of our properties. Look at the zoning, see what's allowed, and see what our ideas are, and then maybe come up with something, and then ask the public to input, and then have the staff put together a request for proposal, because I think that there are a number of entities out there that would be interested in proposing on our properties. We just need to tell them what it is we're looking for, so we don't get general unsolicited offers with things like, well, we'll know it when we see it. I think we know what we might like to see, and that's going to be framed a lot by what's allowed, and that's a fairly broad scope of that zone. Is that, it's MUC1, or is it
MUD.
2? MUD, okay, so that's got a fairly large scope. And I think that would be, at least that's a place to start. Look at that, and then any others that might have that same zoning category that we could kind of say, well, here's this one, and these are some of the things, because you had some great ideas about the 10th and Main, and I think we need to put it back out to the original proposal that you guys talked about when you were on the commission before. So that's a good, those are easy, low-hanging fruit type properties. And I was just channeling what you were saying.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
Well, contrary to what's being represented by some members of the community, the Urban Renewal Commission and this governing body are trying to execute the will of the people. The problem is we are not sure what that will is. I personally don't view that last vote on the $40+ million expenditure as a reflection on urban renewal as a whole. So the things we talked about doing are trying to move forward with a project smaller in scope, more well-defined, educating the community, and see what their reaction is to that. And if in fact the community says, we don't want it in any form, then for all intents and purposes, urban renewal will be dead under the current situation. We've often talked about the quiet zone. That's an urban renewal project, and are we going going to move forward on these, or are we stuck in a place in time and can't move forward at all? So quite honestly, we're just trying to get to determine, and we are listening, again, contrary to what's being said, what does this community want to do? Do they want urban renewal as a tool, or do they not? And we need to hear your voice. And everything we do is aimed in that direction. So I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Conkle, are we still talking to ODOT about the quiet zone amounts?
Yeah, I do not have any updates right now on the ODOT Quiet Zone project.
Oh, let's get that moving.
So in terms of consensus and where do we go, from what I'm hearing that we do want to try to keep moving in some form. I'm hearing that our owned properties are the priority.
Yes.
And nods. Okay. Do we have a general consensus that we should investigate and get more information from staff about the residential properties that we own and possibly disposing of those?
I think they contribute to the managerial fees, and I think the market is such now, it would be a good time to dispose of them. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I mind the discussion, but I don't know
Yeah,
if
there's
I
not
agree
a
about
lot, not a lot to
disposing, but
discuss. We're
yeah.
either going to sell them or we're not.
Yeah. So generally speaking,
Yes.
we want to pursue,
Yes.
okay. Okay. Where it starts to get trickier is which projects do we want to try to move forward with first? And I thought Mr. Herman's letter was thought-provoking. It was very well thought out. He's provided information on a couple of different funding sources that we could use on the Cove. And I think there's probably a lesson for us to learn from what our friends across the river in West Lynn have been able to do with a public process and get support for a new urban renewal district there. So, that would be a way to go. How we get to an RFP on any of our properties, that's where it starts to get tricky, because I get your point that we don't want to settle for just anything, but we're also not developers. And we have to put forth an RFP that that is going to make sense for a private developer to do. And my thought would be it's MUD district. There's a list of 8 or 10. I'm guessing. I'm trying to remember of allowable uses in that zone. So maybe we look at a piece of property and we say, okay, here, this is what allows in that zone. Is there anything here that we want to emphasize, or is there anything here that we don't want to have that there? And maybe we could come up with a general and enough RFP that would still attract interest, that would still be directional as far as what we want, but that would still make sense for development. So
Sure, yeah.
I don't know. So,
I don't disagree with you. I have had experience in writing them for properties in the Central East Side District and Interstate.
Sure.
And I have every confidence that Mr. Graham will. I think one of the things I would like to ask, since I wasn't involved in it, I was under the impression on the Cove project, I bought into the whole vision of what it was supposed to be before it was changed several times. And I'm wondering if there's a way we can revisit that, because I didn't think from the beginning part it was a bad plan. We were going to get some units, we were going to get some park property, we were going to get a continuation of a trail. And I don't think we should throw that plan completely out the window, because it's already been done. And Commissioner Smith has talked many times about the elements of it that it was intriguing enough to me to want to say, yeah, let's take another look at that. Maybe that is something we still want. I know I still have people ask me, when are we getting that amphitheater? And I'm like, well, I know you're laughing, but I said, maybe we will revisit that. I hope we will revisit it. Maybe that's a project we still want to do. Maybe it's a project as part of an RFP we want to do. But we have a plot process now that was created as part of the plan. So I don't have any, I think we basically tell the staff what the elements we want. They will put it together, we will review it, and, it might take a couple of meetings, but it's relatively simple. I know you all have ideas about different things, but I think you're right. Like I said, let's see what the zoning allows, and see, we don't want to suggest something that isn't allowed. That just makes things more difficult, and we don't want people to have to do, and you and I both know that quite well from being on the planning commission. So I think you're correct. Let's take a look at what that zone allows. Let's take a look at, which ones maybe fall into that same category. Because not everything is all zoned, it's not all zoned the same as I recall. As I thought we've got a couple of different zones with properties that we own.
Off the top of my head, I believe it's all mixed use downtown at this point.
Yeah, so that makes it even easier if it's a similar zoning district.
Yes, sir.
So I said it before and I'll say it again. I don't think that the vote on the proposed Rossman landfill project was a referendum on urban renewal as a whole. I think the $40 million plus figure was staggering to some. And my proposal has always been, and it's something I learned in my business life, to do a smaller project, what we call proof of concept, to show people that it can work without these large numbers. And we should look into those kind of things and maybe just do one small successful project to demonstrate to the very people that look at these things that it's a workable solution. And again, if even a small project fails, then we have to go back and take a look at the concept as a whole. Is it workable? So that's what I've said from the beginning to the end. Thanks.
Do you have a favorite?
I think we'd have to do exactly what the mayor said, is let's put forward a project. The other thing is there may be people that want to develop in the urban renewal area that do not even seek urban renewal funds. And we should entertain, when we put out our request for proposals, that might be part of their response. Because the sale of urban renewal property does not require a vote of the people.
Right. So in terms of RFP, is there
I will go
one or
with
two that you would like to?
I'd like to look at them all first and see what would be the greatest return on the investment, the easiest to accomplish, and the one that doesn't stun people in terms of dollar amount. So we have to look at those when they come up.
Mr. Conkle, is that giving you any direction?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is without any in-depth analysis other than years of trying to work on these. When I think about these, properties that we own, primarily the four main ones, Stimson, 10th and Main, 12th and Main, and the Cove, in order of difficulty, just thinking through the issues, the historical values we've seen, the issues we run into historically and trying to reach agreements on those properties, I think Stimson is probably your easiest piece. I think you're probably tied between 12th and Main and 10th and Main. They both have some issues, one being a sewer that bisects the property, the other being the railroad tracks and tough access. And I think Cove is probably your most difficult of those four, if I were to think through them. And so I guess the question is, I was hearing, bring back information about the two residential properties that we own, and we can bring that information back and we can make a decision on that. Those seem very simple depending on what we decide. I think Stimson is probably, in my gut, probably says is the easiest of the four main ones. So I guess, is it enough to start with the two residential in Stimson, or do you want us to bring back 12th and Main, 10th and Main, and the Cove all at the same time to have that discussion?
I think the Cove is an ambitious project.
I would agree.
I think that will not further our interest in getting a response from the community. So that would be last on my list. I understand that the smaller the project you do, I understand that the smaller the project you do, the smaller your return on that project, probably. But as I said before I turned on the mic, I think that the Cove is an ambitious project with a lot of difficulties, so I would lean toward Stimson might be a very straightforward one to do in disposition of the two residences, or those two other properties, put them up and see if we have a vision for them and put it out. I'd stay away from the large, financially, people react to those large numbers differently. So I'd like to see a small gain and a demonstration that the concept works.
Commissioner Cross?
Thank you. I don't know, I think I'd like to see the 10th Street and the 12th Street, how much would it cost for us to change the sewer line, adjust it to actually make it presentable to a developer? It's a small project, it's a tiny project. The 10th Street, I know it's the... Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. But with the 10th Street, I know it was the quiet zone. We're working through that. So again, I think those could also be for the mixed use with residential down there. We could do RFPs for those. We can actually have some say in what goes into it as we're doing the developer. So I think those are actually, as you're saying, a demonstration of what urban renewal can do. I think those are actually the two properties that you can actually do a demonstration of what it really can do in an area that's already kind of built. So it's not bad. Stimson, it's kind of out there by itself, but it's a lot easier than the Cove. But so it'd be nice on those two properties to actually see why developers aren't. What could we do to actually make a developer want to do a project that we want them to do, that Rocky would be happy with?
For 10th and 12th.
Yeah.
It's still possible for me to get some background information on the Cove, because I think I need to think about it, but I don't have any of the stuff, because it was before my time.
Original plan exist?
Yes.
Okay.
It might be helpful for
That would be
everybody
helpful for us to see.
to review it, just because it's been a while.
And there was a great deal of public comment in that, in the visioning of that earlier model. Yes, I think it's a great idea, but it's one of the reasons why I suggest any property that we're thinking about having be public property, I really think we need public input. And I'm not suggesting that applies to everything that we've got, but anything that we zero out as public property should have a lot of public input.
And the bigger the project, the more important that is.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, the reason I balk at the Cove is because of my familiarity with it, and it's a complex project in its own right, involving things like water quality. And the dollar amounts would be huge, and the time to market would be long.
As great as it would be, it would not be a quick project.
Yeah, I'm not saying we start with, I just want to get prepped so I can understand what it was.
Right.
Yes, understood.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So are we okay, generally speaking, with the list that Mr. Conkle proposed, kind of in
Yes.
reverse degree of difficulty?
Yes.
Yes.
There's something he brought up. I think we're going to have meetings that are needed to be longer for public input purposes. This schedule has worked okay for us, but I think as we develop this, we're going to have longer meetings, and they'll probably have to be on dates that are different than city commissions.
Right. Agreed. But probably, this next one, if we could have a 5:30 start and not have other items of any length on that agenda, and I know you can't control that, but.
Get my crystal ball out here.
Yeah.
Right now, we don't have anything.
And if we could get that hour and a half, we can start zeroing in from that higher level discussion.
Awesome.
Anything else? Yeah, Commissioner Morrow?
Thank you, Chair Mitchell. I just wanted to go back to a public comment that was made. I absolutely agree with what Mr. Gifford said. I think that we ought to be making those investments, but the reason why I decided to go, quote unquote, in the spirit of compromise is because due to litigation, we can't spend that money.
Right.
And so as much as I want to set up urban renewal for success, which would also include the financial aspect and collecting the maximum TIF amount, which I supported originally, and as you will recall, I'm the one who was able to flip a few people at that original budget committee to support that as well. The reason why I myself flipped is because it is equally as important for the future of urban renewal to have public buy-in as it is for us to have the finances to do the project. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
Commissioner, Communications?
Nothing tonight, sir. Thanks.
Okay. Well, I want to apologize for the agenda number confusion on my part and the public comment confusion. We'll do better next time. If there's nothing else, we're adjourned.